Welcome back to the Designated Pundits and I-80 Sports Major League Soccer Podcast. Today, we are previewing the 2024 season for FC Cincinnati. Thank you, everyone who's joining us already. I see you guys in the in our count here. It'd be great if everyone who's listening to this video, watching us on YouTube, or even listening on a replay, hits that subscribe button. It helps us to bring videos like this to you early and often each week. So, thank you everyone here for watching, and thank you to our special guest, Justin Blair from Cincy Soccer Talk. We know how the Cincy fans have a hate-hate relationship with me, so we need to bring on an expert here to, let cooler heads prevail.
Yeah,
Justin,
I was pretty convinced that I was going to get on the blacklist for FC Cincinnati fans for coming on here, but I appreciate you having me. I really love your all show, and then hopefully I can have some Cincinnati fans come around to you.
Absolutely, and I've always loved Cincinnati. It was one game I sent one tweet.
We don't hate Cincinnati on this show. We don't hate Cincinnati.
I hate Matt Miazga. We can talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah,
but
I got feelings on Matt, but otherwise, we don't hate Cincinnati.
No.
We got plenty of love for Cincinnati.
No, it's all love around here.
Let's talk about what they did last season on the field. 29-5, top of the Eastern Conference. Their second loss wasn't until June 23rd. They had an incredible winning streak to start the season. Plus 18 goal differential, second in the league, only to league champions Columbus Crew. They allowed 39 goals, tied fourth best, and they won Supporter Shield, first trophy in club history. Justin, that's got to feel good after the wrong silverware. You get a piece of something good here in a Supporter Shield. Talk about last season.
Absolutely, yeah. The Supporter Shield was a confirmation for all the fans in Cincinnati of where this team has come around. That's why we celebrate the Shield so much. I know a lot of fans kind of chagrin whenever they hear the Shield being mentioned, but for Cincinnati to have those three wooden spoons, then to have a season with Pat Noonan where we get to the playoffs, and then to be able to, bring home some hardware, right? Maybe not something that's going to stay in the trophy case, but definitely something that we can all be proud of. Going into the season, it looked like it was going to be the attacking, the trio up top, Brandon Vasquez, Lucho Acosta, and Brenner. But early in the season, as you mentioned, in that long run where we were able to have a really good
undefeated streak, yeah.
Yeah, undefeated streak, particularly at home, was based on our defense. Some of those pieces we had brought in the season before, like Abina Nwobano and having Matt Miazga back there. And of course, Yerson Mosquera was able to solidify our defense to where our offense could kind of evolve into the season.
Absolutely. Love it. Let's continue to talk about what happened at the end of last year, because, we could actually talk about the Shield versus MLS Cup versus other trophies, where we rank them. Red Bulls won 3 trophies and 3 Shields in 5 years, and the first one is always nice. There was champagne in the parking lot. That is for absolutely sure. But show me someone who calls the Shield a championship, and I will show you someone who hasn't won MLS Cup. That's got to be the number one goal, right?
Yeah, that's just it, right? The Shield is, again, a confirmation that your program is headed, or your franchise is in the right shape, right? You can be week in, week out competitive. To win the cup, it's a bit different, right? You have to catch hot there at the end of the season. And part of catching hot and what plagued FC Cincinnati is you got to be fresh. You can't be having guys run 2,600 minutes out there over the season. So chasing after the Shield sometimes, I think we've seen it in the past recent history where Shield winners typically bow out. I know LAFC in 2022 was a little bit of an outlier for that.
Except that one time 2 years ago when it happened. It never happens. You're right.
Yeah.
I do think that they are different skills to build. You know, they're different rosters being built for the season against being built for a short series. You know, we see it in all different kinds of sports. Baseball comes to mind where, like, you know, there'll be a team that wins 100 plus games, but their top 2 guys in the rotation just aren't the best. So in a best of 5 series, you know, they're not as good as throughout the rest of the season. And I think that's kind of where you guys fell short. Lost 3-2 to the Columbus Crew in the conference finals. That's got to hurt for sure.
It was absolutely brutal, especially the way that game went down, where Cincinnati was up 2-0 at halftime. It's the Crew. I think a lot of the people that follow sport and are smart about the sport, the Crew was probably the most dangerous team coming into the playoffs. So that was like, going into that matchup, I was like, if we can jump out up top, maybe we have a chance to survive the Crew, because they could put goals away. And the way they were playing up top, especially in, you know, that series against Atlanta, I was, you know, quivering. And I knew going into the second half that, you know, it only took one for the Crew to get back in it. And unfortunately, they ended our run.
Absolutely. Now, I think that that was obviously a negative, a low point in your season, but there were plenty of highs. You had Luciano Acosta, league MVP throughout the course of the season. He just has been on fire since returning to Major League Soccer, even better, if possible, than the form he was with when he was with DC United. There were some strange things that happened throughout the course of the season also. We want to touch on those. Aaron Bupenza benched for returning late for international duty. I believe it's the Gabon national team that he goes for, and this is the second or third time he's showed up late, and then he was benched very late in very important games at the end of the season for that. Let's talk about Aaron Bupenza, like that whole scenario, because he also then started like the next game.
Yeah, it's definitely some maturing that goes on there. There's been speculation about, of course, they keep that tight to their chest there at FC Cincinnati, but there's been some speculation as to why those late returns have been going on. The first one, it seemed like it was something that the club was not okay with. The second one, the club was a little bit more understanding with, so he didn't have so much of a suspension. And then, of course, you know, some of the off-season rumors have come up, and it for Aaron Bupenza,
that was very strange too. Let's just touch on that but we don't really need to go into long details. Video emerged of the X-rated variety that apparently showed Aaron Bupenza. Don't Google it. Don't look at it. I did not, and you don't need to either. So we don't in any way endorse that. But apparently in some countries where he's traveled, that is punishable by jail time.
Correct. And the important thing to remember is that no charges have been brought on Aaron Bupenza. There's been some speculation on how that video arised, and it seems like it's more of a blackmail type situation. I'll say it. I know the club probably won't say that or speak on that, but I think it's more of the blackmail variety, given some of the reports from Africa.
All right. And then the last at the end of the season, Matt Miazga, a player who really, really would have helped you guys out to not give up 3 goals against Columbus Crew late in the game. He gets himself probably the silliest red card I've seen. If I'm not mistaken, the first yellow was at the end whistle. And then the second yellow was during the penalty kick. He turns to the fans. He's blowing kisses to the people in the New Jersey stands there at Red Bull Arena. Really dumb. And the funny part is that yellow was not a second yellow to a red. It was a yellow card accumulation from all the yellow card he picked up in the previous game. So it was for 3 yellows in 2 games and not for 2 yellows in 1 game, because the what happens after the final whistle blows doesn't count or something strange like that. So he was suspended for that. Can we agree now? Because I know a lot of people in Cincinnati land were saying, oh, he was showing love. He was showing respect to the fans. We know, you guys know that is not true, right? Like, I'm not even being like joking. Like, that is the lamest excuse I've ever heard. And there is 0% chance that was his intention. We know that. I'm a New Jersey guy myself. Fun fact, I went to the same high school as Matt Miazga 10 years earlier. We know people in common. We would see him at the grocery store. There is no chance that he was being gracious or thankful in that moment. 0%. And I will not even acknowledge that as a possibility.
So I'm not going to defend it, but at first, when I first saw it, and I can see why so many people defended it initially, right? At first, you notice that Matt Miazga turns around with a big, fist bump celebration. And what do we normally see players do when they're returning to their former club, right? It's usually a non-celebration. So it looked like he was cleaning up for that by turning around to the fans. But then we got all the replays and all that stuff, and it's like, okay.
There's a chant that the South Ward does to any ex-Red Bull player, any ex-Metro player, and it's the Metro reject chant. So he was getting Metro reject the entire time he stepped up for the ball. And then that, like, there's just no way. Something else happened weird afterwards that he apparently he ripped his shirt off like the Hulk, kicked the ref's door down, went inside and said, "Show me the head ref." He demanded his presence right there.
No, doesn't sound like that happened at all. But, the MLS, regardless of the initial review and how some of that information came out, they handed down that 3-game suspension. But no, it sounds like one of those deals where Matt was meandering on his way to the bus because he had his pizza in tow, he's showered, he was in his street clothes, and he was able to access the referee locker room,
which he would have known where was from his time as a player at New York Red Bull. So
they're not really a secret. It's not like that room is usually hidden somewhere. It's it's usually close. But he knows better. He can't go in there.
Exactly.
It's like it would be like walking into the women's locker room. You can't go there.
Yeah. 3 games may have. I would even concede that 3 games was probably a lot. A lot. Yeah. But the fact that he got a red card in that same game and was being suspended anyway, you have the 1 game, might as well tack on 2. That would have brought him straight through the playoffs. You could have used him. You could have used him in that game against the Columbus Crew. 100%.
We were already down Nick Haglund going into the playoffs. Yeah. A guy who logged a ton of minutes for FC Cincinnati there in that 3 center back system. So not having him or Matt Miazga definitely changed the calculus. We had to play with Alvis Powell playing center back. And it's definitely not where you want to be when you're facing the Columbus Crew.
No. Absolutely. Let's take a look at the contributors who actually put the ball in the net for FC Cincinnati. You had Luciano Costa, 17 goals, 10 assists. Brandon Vasquez, 8 goals, 2 assists. Alvaro Barrial, 5 goals, 6 assists. Dominic Badji, 5 goals, 3 assists. Aaron Bupenza with 5 goals, although that was over a very abbreviated summer schedule. Junior Moreno, 4 goals, 2 assists. And Sergio Santos with 4 goals and 1 assist. Obviously, Luciano Costa, he's the guy. League MVP, he's producing. I'm actually surprised at his goal total. I would have thought his assists would have been higher and his goals would have been a little bit lower. And even when I was making this graphic, I said 17 goals, 10 assists, and Brandon Vasquez said 8 goals, 2 assists. I thought those assists would be a little higher, but that's the way it broke down. Let's talk about the contributors here.
Yeah, I mean, it starts and ends with Lucho Acosta. I mean, Lucho Acosta is he's the MVP for a reason. And watching FC Cincinnati, you can, beside the production, you can definitely see why he's the MVP of this club. Lucho Acosta is the orchestrator of this entire team. When he's not in there, this team sputters. There's no midfield connection at all. The attacking forwards have to drop back far beyond midfield just to link up play. So Lucho Acosta, I mean, I could spend 30 minutes just talking about him. Obviously, Brandon Vasquez had a pretty good season, coming off of 19 goals the season before. I think some people were a little bit disappointed in the production, particularly some of the sitters, but he had really good cup performances. I know he had a hat trick against Chivas. So, I mean, Brandon was a stud for us last year. And then Alvaro Barrial, I mean, we mentioned this in our chat with Cincinnati Soccer Talk. I mean, this is our 4th left back in 4 years. So there wasn't much expectation for Mariel. I mean, we all knew he had the caliber, he had the ability, but for him to be able to contribute, may not show up on the stat line, but being able to float up that left channel and really, connect with Lucho and connect with Brandon, it was invaluable.
And in fact, it actually does show up on the stat line. Look, it's right there. He's the third contributor for the team.
Yeah.
So in that case, it kind of did show off there.
Yeah, maybe not the production that we saw a year ago from some other players playing the position.
Let's turn the page on the 2023 season. 2024 is upon us. We're recording this January 31st, the very last day of the first month. Have a comment here saying Barry All, what a player, absolutely. Let's talk about some incoming and outgoing players here. Little typo on the graphic here. Incoming players, Miles Robinson, center back, really solidifies what you have going on there. Forward, Corey Baird, that is to replace Brandon Vasquez, who has just moved to Mexico. And hopeful midfielder, Pavel Busha, which the deal is not officially official, but it is official. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, the murmur around the club, you had the Tommy bomb come out. You had Pat Brennan, who's been covering FC Cincinnati from the jump. He kind of basically went out and confirmed it himself. So yeah, it looks like he's going to be added to the club, and that will really help us out whenever we're looking at Junior Moreno not being signed. So.
Yeah, Pavel Busha, smaller player, midfield, kind of, I guess, of the more attacking variety. Played in the Czech First League for the last 6 years, age 26, kind of still playing in his prime. Could be a really, really good pickup, someone to add to that midfield for you. However, although there were a couple of really good additions, there were a lot of contributors, a lot of good players leaving the club. You had Brandon Vasquez, Jefferson Mosquera, Dominic Baji, Ray Gaddis, Santiago Arias. Those are all the players headed out. What is the biggest loss here? Is it Brandon Vasquez?
It'd have to be out of this bunch. I obviously, and I think it says Jefferson Mosquera. It's Yerson Mosquera, but
yes,
Yerson Mosquera is obviously a league of his own as far as center backs go. But Brandon Vasquez is somebody that's been a proven winner with FC Cincinnati, has the capability to hold up play for guys that don't have that ability. He seems to be one of the most willing forward to drop back and help the defense. He did a lot that doesn't necessarily go into just goals and assists. So yeah, Brandon Vasquez, and you're seeing it with Monterrey right now. The guy is unbelievable. He'll be on the USMNT for a long time.
Yeah, he will. He should be a lot higher up the depth chart,
I think.
And moving to Mexico may be what does that for sure. Mm-hmm. You lost Brenner last year, Brandon Vasquez this year. Does that leave? That's got to leave you a little shaky about the attacking options here, right?
Yeah, it does. We feel pretty good about Bupensa. I think Bupensa sometimes was kind of getting in. There wasn't the chemistry. They admitted that with the club. Him and Lucho didn't have necessarily that chemistry, and sometimes he drifted far into Vasquez's territory. It just seemed like he was a guy that's just trying to poach goals whenever we kind of brought him in to replace Brenner. So that didn't work out well, but it does look like he will be a solid Vasquez replacement. Now, bringing in Corey Baird does kind of help with that. Somebody who can play a little bit more of that floating winger type role as a forward really helps with Lucho Acosta's ability to, give and go like he was able to do with Brenner and really attack the box, because Lucho likes to play in the box. Lucho, as a 10, he's very good playing outside the box, but Lucho being in the box is probably the most deadly thing for a center back.
Yeah, so right here, I'm just kind of looking at this, and I don't like your offseason moves. I have to be a little negative here. I mean, Corey Baird never scored more than 8 goals in a season. Last year was his best pro year at the age of 27. He brings speed and speed and speed. That's kind of his best attribute.
I think he brings a little bit of guile too. I think he's not a great goal scorer, but he is a guy that can score goals in like quite a few different ways. He can score with his head. He can score with his feet. Like, he gets himself in good positions. But Bob's right. He's not going to be.
There's been 4 pro seasons where he didn't score enough goals to score one with his head and one with his feet.
Yeah,
that's an issue to me.
He can do it, but he doesn't always do it. That's sort of the question for me. Like Vasquez moves out, Bupenza has like a decent goal scoring record when he was playing, but between Vasquez and Baji, you're losing something like 14 goals that you kind of have to make up now. Yeah, say that Bupenza can kind of kick on. Can he score like 8 more, and can Baird score like 6? Because that's sort of what you need.
Yep. Yeah.
And that for me feels like a doubt.
Yeah, I think that Bupenza's got a lot more goals in him. I think he could be around the 13, 14 mark for himself. I think Bupenza has all the ability in the world. It's just, like I said, just having an off season with Lucho, having an off season with some of that midfield play, and being able to have somebody like a Corey Barrett that's not just a true poaching goal scorer like Vasquez was. Vasquez, I mean, they ran the same run most of the time whenever they were on the field. So hopefully we can just isolate Bupenza and be able to have people like Ariel floating up the wing, Corey Baird, Yuya Kubo can push forward pretty hard, and Acosta obviously can score goals. Being able to feed the beast that is Bupenza.
So I pulled up a depth chart here. Let's first, before we get to that, talk a little about the tactics, style of play. Tell us everything we would need to know turning on at FC Cincinnati for the very first time.
Yeah, so FC Cincinnati for now 2 years, almost every competition have run the 3-5-2 under Pat Noonan. I think they tried to use the 4-4-2 diamond the first game against Austin in 2022. That didn't work out very well. So they really found something here because they knew that they had some odd pieces with Yuya Kubo, Bariel, and the like. But having ability to have Lucho independent up there at the top of the box, that's key. And then being able to have 3 center backs back when we didn't have necessarily the caliber that we have now, it's just kind of something that has stuck now. We have good center backs that can release up the field as well. So that's kind of as FC Cincinnati likes to float up the wings, try to connect to the top with the Lucho Acosta or somebody playing up from the midfield, and then be able to, poach in goals. It's a very direct play. There's not too many in the box or set pieces that this team tries to win.
Absolutely. Love that. Talk a little bit about Pat Noonan in his 3rd season here.
Yeah, Pat Noonan is the savior of Cincinnati. I mean, we talked about it at the top of the show. 3 wooden spoons. Bring in Pat Noonan takes us to a playoff win in his first season, and then follows it up with a Supporters Shield and a semifinal, a conference final approach. Pat Noonan obviously has a great coaching staff with him, with Dom Kinnear and Kenny Arena, and then obviously he's got a former USMNT guy in the front office. God, I just literally blanked on that. Sorry about that. I have to follow that.
No problem. So
yeah.
let's go a little more into the formation here. We talked about the fullbacks, Alvaro Barrial, Alvis Powell. These are guys who are going to be pushing all the way up the field. I know you always say 3-man back line. I just prefer a 5-man back line. It's the same thing on paper. It just helps me think of where everyone sets up on the field. So you kind of got like a 5-3-2 or like a 5-2-1-2 to be like really, really specific. Luciano Acosta, he'll get at the ball no matter where it is on the field, but you don't want to leave too much defensively for him. So attacking trident, Baird, Bupenza, Luciano Acosta. The next 2 guys are very, very important players on the field, the 2 center midfielders here, Yoyo Kubo and Obinen Nwodobo. Can you talk about them and how that depth chart sets up?
Yeah, so Obi, I think Obi is probably one of the most underrated players on FC Cincinnati's team. He could arguably be seen as one of the best CDMs in the entire league. He is the do-it-all defensive player in front of that back line. And then obviously Yuya Kubo, he converted from a forward position. He's played kind of everything in the midfield as of late. He's played the 6, he's played the 8, he's played the 10. Kubo is just kind of a plug-and-play player, but obviously has a very attacking-minded. And then obviously Marco Angolo, we brought him in last year. Didn't see the pitch a lot in meaningful minutes. I mean, he was a contributor through the season, but he necessarily didn't have that play to be able to overcome Junior Moreno. And then we were able to shuffle in a few other players like Malik Pinto in the midfield, and we're able to get maybe like even a Kimio Dorniez, who plays the forward naturally, but was asked to play at the 10 a couple of times last season.
Love it. This back line, Ian Murphy, Matt Miazga, Miles Robinson. You still have Nick Hagelin there, Kip Keller, who I think they just picked up this past offseason.
We did, yep.
We have our best pairing with Murphy, Miazga, Robinson here. This was one of the stingiest defenses in Major League Soccer last year, and it appears on paper that they got much better by adding Miles Robinson. However, that's not always how defenses work. Defenses are like offensive lines in football, where like you don't know if they actually got any better, how they're going to be synced up together. Sometimes it's just lightning in a bottle. You guys catch at the right time. So let's talk about this center back pairing. You guys, I know you're expecting to be the elite defense in the Eastern Conference, but is that a reality right now?
I mean, it remains to be seen. We haven't seen any minutes with. We know Miles Robinson's pedigree, but he is coming off that injury. He only had about 20 games with Atlanta last season, through all competitions. So we saw times that he made mistakes and times that he was a little bit late to his step. So we'll have to see how he gels with Matt Miazga. Matt Miazga is the leader of that back line, so there's no moving him off of that line. And he was defender of the year last year. Ian Murphy, he's been able to, slowly progress his way in. He was a 2022 draftee from Duke. I mean, he is played exceptional. He got called up to the USMNT camp here in the January camp. And then Kip Keller was another 2022 draftee that FC Cincinnati actually targeted in that draft. They got him from Austin FC this season. And then Nick Hagelin, I mean, the veteran, Mr. Cincinnati himself. He had a little bit of an injury there at the end of the season. He should be out for a few months to start the season. But if things kind of need to be tweaked, we do have those pieces. But I don't think anybody at FC Cincinnati is expecting a very, subpar backline. I think we're all expecting a high caliber backline to complement Roman Celentano.
I do. My question, of course, would be like, can you replace the goals with a better defensive product? And that's kind of where I'm struggling. Like, where did this team get better? That wasn't really a perceived area of weakness, and I like that you improved it. But are they really going to like get clean sheet after clean sheet, week after week after week after week? Who knows? But we do know behind them is the man with the most minutes on FC Cincinnati from all of last season, Roman Celentano. Just mention what he means to the team.
Yeah, he means a ton. Another 2022 draftee, brought him in from IU. That's Pat Noonan's alumni. The kid has just played phenomenal. I mean, he was asked to come in very early in 2022 to help out the. I think it was LAFC was the first game that he had, and we all knew what LAFC was in 2022.
Sure.
And he stood on his head the whole game. Conceded some goals, but that was foundation for that confidence that Roman plays with. Roman's probably one of the most confident goalkeepers. I think he has some holes in his game. I don't think he's very good with the ball going forward. I don't think he links up into the midfield on some of those goal kicks, but communication could be a little bit better. But as far as instinct and his ability, I think he had the goal of the year, or goal save of the year. With that save against Columbus in that first Hellas drilled.
Yeah, goalie is always a strange position because you can make a couple of good penalty saves and like some outstanding stand on your head moments and make people think a lot better of you, than they do. But Celentano is tactically sound. Like drop him on any club in the league, a contender, an MLS Cup. I'm okay with that. I feel comfortable with Celentano back there. Scott, any questions before we head on to the final segment here?
Yeah, the one thing that I've kind of been thinking about, related to Cincinnati, is the depth. I know that so when we do a lot of these previews, sometimes, as we fill this out, sometimes all we get are like starters in the positions, and sometimes we get depth that's like 3 people deep. Looking around at our depth chart, I am noticing like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, players, 6 players who have nobody listed behind them. And I, also players who we're not necessarily talking about, oh, well, they've got this person pushing them or that person pushing them. How do you feel about Cincinnati's depth? Do you think like the transfers have helped that, or is this going to be a problem like in the attack where behind Corey Bear you're looking at relying on Ordonez, who's 20 years old and played like 200 minutes last season?
Yeah, I feel like the depth is improved on the back line. I think that we all know that FC Cincinnati really hasn't been able to fill in those pieces, but look around the league. Most teams are filling in some of that depth through their 2 team, through their academy. And FC Cincinnati has consistently finished the last in that department. So they have made some improvements on that. But we do have pieces that got minutes. Previously mentioned Malik Pinto. He's gotten quite a bit of minutes in this season, particularly through club play, right? And then you have pieces. I think the biggest concern for depth, if I can pause there, is the wings. I think having wingers like Barrial and Powell, when we had a little bit more depth in those positions with Brett Halsey and having Ray Gaddis and having Santi Arias. I think we haven't really answered those questions in the depth there. I think we're comfortable with the forwards, at least up until summer. I think we're really comfortable at midfield. We're comfortable at center back, very comfortable at goalkeepers, but I really worry about those wings, and I think everybody in FC Cincinnati.
Well, part of the reason for that weakness is because you keep selling your wingers each and every season. And that kind of brings me to the next question. Who on this roster is most likely to not be in an FC Cincinnati uniform by the end of the season? I mean, I would think that'd be Alvaro Barrial, but you don't have a B option there.
Yeah, you don't have a B option. I think that Murphy might be the only contender in that bunch because you're not selling off of Bupenza. Costa's here to stay. Kubo is kind of an interesting one, but it doesn't seem like the market value for him is going to be enough for somebody to come calling. And I just don't see anybody else getting minutes. So out of this starting, I mean, obviously Barrial will probably be gone in the summer. We keep saying that, but I am pretty sure this time he will be gone at the end of European seasons. But Ian Murphy would be somebody I would keep an eye on. And potentially Roman Celentano. Remember, we still have Alec Khan in the back line. If somebody gives us an offer for Celentano, that's outrageous. Of course, FC Cincinnati will move on that.
Kind of brings us to our final segment, which is going to be storylines, things that we need to follow throughout the season. These are, things that even the casual observer should monitor throughout the season, things that are really going to make a difference in the long run for FC Cincinnati. First one is kind of how do the new roster pieces gel? I know Scott asks this question to people all the time, and it's like, how did this team make themselves better? Because when I look at FC Cincinnati, I don't see them being better than they were last season in any way. They got significantly worse on offense. They have Corey Baird starting. Think about the difference in the drop-off. I know you guys are hyping him up. Oh, he can score 8 goals next season. Uh-oh. He is not Brandon Vasquez. And that is a stark difference. Adding a center back, that's fine. They need to gel. They need to find that, right? You said Bupenza never really found the chemistry. This back line needs to gel immediately, and if they don't, this team is worse than last year.
I don't know. I disagree because I think that our biggest question mark from last season was how did we replace Brenner and how do we manage center back depth, because our center backs played next to every minute before the Leagues Cup. So we did answer those questions, right? We're not asking him to score 19 goals. Brenner didn't score 19 goals, but the last season he was there. Brenner was able to be a dynamic enough player up top. And if you look at the players that we had up top, we had Vasquez, we had Agbaji, we had Sergio Santos up top. None of those players are dynamic with the ball at their feet. And we're just asking somebody to be able to open up that guy that's on the other side as a forward, and that would be Bopenza. So I think that it may be a little bit overblown to say that we've gotten significantly worse in offense, but we'll have to see. Brandon's obviously a high caliber player. But yes, you're right. The center backs have to gel immediately. I mean, we're talking about some true professionals with Miles Robinson and Matt Miazga, and then obviously Ian Murphy's got a world of talent. So I think they should be able to. I think there's some egos in their room, but there's also, a common goal, a common thread, and good leadership on that team.
Next question is about Luciano Acosta, world beater, MVP last year. Can he repeat performance, or is that what we're looking at again? Because that's what you're counting on.
Yeah, I think Lucio Acosta, I think he can continue that performance. I don't think that the numbers will indicate that. I think per minute it will indicate that. I think that Lucho is going to get some rest this season. Lucho played entirely too many minutes last season. I think it was 26:59 or something like
26:05, and that's regular season. So
it was brutal to watch. I mean, he played next to every minute that he could. So I think that FC Cincinnati not chasing after a Supporters Shield is definitely going to help.
You don't want it again. One is great. One is the perfect number of Supporter Shields. You want to, yeah.
So I think Lucho's numbers will drop in that regard, right? You just won't see the volume because the minutes are going to go down. But I do think that we're still going to get that performance. People kind of underestimate how young Lucho still is. I think people are surprised. He's only 29, I believe that is.
Yeah, he'll be 29 this season. So he's got a few years on him. And this isn't a one-off. Since he stepped in Cincinnati, he's played over 2,500 minutes each and every season. So this isn't something
we've had lots of problems to address. We had Jeff Cameron. No disrespect to Jeff Cameron, but we had Jeff.
You can disrespect Jeff Cameron on this show.
Our center back last season. We had some people who probably never should have been signed to the team playing in the midfield. So there's been a lot of massaging that Lucho necessarily getting a backup for Lucho has been below on the priority list.
Absolutely, as well it should be, because you can't replace him, no matter what.
Yeah.
Scott, throw over to you.
Yeah, you're not replacing Lucho. Okay, so here's another question. This team had some, I don't know, behavioral issues. Like, is that going to be a continuing thing?
I think it's a little overblown because of the Matt Miazga situation.
Well,
right? I think that
yes and no, because all his suspensions this past season came from cards that he talked himself into, not because he went out and like actually earned it, right?
Right.
So what was the stat? How many cards did he have this season, and how many were because of? I think he had 12 yellow cards this season, and that's like during the regular season, and 3 of them were on tackles.
Yeah.
Like, he's not getting yellow carded for his play on the field. He's not getting, going in late, and they're all his mouth, every single one.
Put to one side the whole postseason debacle, right? Put that to one side. In the regular season, this is a guy who served suspensions because he ran his mouth to the ref.
Yep.
Not because he was late with tackles, not because he was, professional foul pulling somebody back. This was a guy who got mad and talked to the ref and got himself suspended. So, like, is that a worry for Pat Noonan? Is that why Miles Robinson comes in, so Pat Noonan can be like, Matt, shape up because I don't really need you?
I don't think it's that kind of play. I think Pat Noonan has addressed it. I think Pat Noonan is a great players coach and can kind of let players kind of do their own thing, but rein them in if need be. And I think that became pretty apparent after that situation in Red Bulls that, because it's not been uncommon we saw Lucho Acosta the season prior, right? Mm-hmm. Gets his yellow card suspension from, when you're wearing the armband, and Matt has worn the armband for FC Cincinnati throughout the season, you're in close proximity to the ref, and if you're not controlling your emotions, that's where you're picking up all those yellows. And I think that unfortunately is the case, and I think that Pat is going to rein that in a little bit more this season. I don't think it's more of a power move because
Mhm.
he completely, I mean, he's co-captain of the team, so Pat clearly trusts Matt
Yeah.
Miazga, but he does expect better from him.
What do you think about Matt Miazga as a captain, as like a leader? Do you think his emotionalness is a help or hindrance?
I think it's a help. I think you look across. There's a lot of frosty eyes along that back line, right? Ian
Mhm.
Murphy's a young player. Uh, Roman Celentano, who's normally your voice on the defense, right? He's a young player and a very quiet player, right? So Matt Miazga is kind of the right, fire, right? To kind of urge that team forward, to kind of get people talking, right? He's not always right, and I think players know that. There are some arguments out on the pitch, but I think that is an acceptable level to kind of light a fire under this team and kind of getting them ready, kind of getting them, vocal and all that stuff. So I don't mind it personally. I've played with people like that I
Mhm.
actually enjoy playing with. I think a lot of players do, especially when they're coming to the defense and picking up yellows by arguing with the ref.
Sure, sure. No, I can drink some of that. I can drink some of that Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Uh, maybe not all of it, but I can drink some of it. I do want my captain to know to pick their moments, right?
Yeah.
I want Matt Miazga to be a little more choosy about when he puts his foot down because you start to build that reputation with the officials, and then they're not listening to you. And your job as a captain is to make sure they do listen to you because you have to represent your team.
And you're
And
also compounding the problem, right?
exactly.
It's like you're not going to get a professional call in that. We have a lot of people in the comments dropping some love. Knifey Buckeye says, get the notebook out. Did you take notes of every Miazga yellow card last season? All of them. Yes. Notebook is right here. It just says, number one, Nashville 1-0 loss. Number two, FC Cincinnati Revolution. No, I have my, trusty dusty, spreadsheets hang out here. What people don't see is what they see on the production end, which is I have the ultra wide monitor. So I have my notes on the left, the screen on the middle, and on the right is I have transfer market up, I have who scored up, I have FB ref, I have Wikipedia, and filling in all the gaps in my knowledge. So I couldn't tell you every single yellow card Matt Miazga had last season, and it's a really rough to look at actually. Like looking at his screen, it's like yellow on like every other game, literally every other game that he played. But no, that was a stat that I've heard online. It's been thrown out quite a bit over the past few weeks, especially after that play, where people brought up how many of his tackles led to yellow cards as opposed to his mouth. And his mouth is like 75% of his yellow cards. He had like 3 or 4 for tackles all of last year.
Yeah. There's one other thing I want to bring up actually, and this kind of slipped my mind earlier, so I apologize. I'm really bringing us backwards in this conversation.
No worries.
But this is about Brandon Vasquez leaving. I remember when Brandon Vasquez had a little spell away from the team on the sidelines, or I don't remember if it was injury or if he was out with international or something like that, but he was away from the team. And I was worried about Cincinnati, dropping games. And I started to look into it. And it turned out that Cincinnati didn't actually lose very much when Vasquez was not part of the team. He did not really have a statistically significant impact on your results. That's got to make you feel pretty confident actually, right?
It does. Yeah, I think it's kind of, what I was mentioning at the top of the show was the numbers may have not reflected. I mean, it's impressive numbers, right? But as
He's a
far
great
as
player, but
what we expected from Brandon, right?
yeah.
For how lethal he can be. Yeah, I think that they've been able to get really creative with that, right? I think obviously Barrial's introduction and being able to float up that left wing and really play kind of as a winger and just stay up there and being able to have 3 center backs in the back line kind of can shift and fill in those voids, right? Help that Santi Arias was injured. like most of the season. So, you had a dedicated winger that you wanted to pull forward and didn't have that, compromise. Yeah. But yeah, I think that the team was able to creatively find ways around Vasquez. And you have to remember also, we had Brenner for about half the season. So some of those numbers can be a little bit inflated. But yeah, I think that Baji was able to be serviceable. I think Yuya Kubo played forward. Lucho played forward. Quimio Dorniez played forward. You had Santos played really hot at the beginning of the season, cooled down tremendously after that. So, it's just we were able to kind of spread it around, right? So instead of having two guys up top that were scoring 19 goals apiece in 2022, we were able to find ways to get Yuya Kubo involved, get some of the midfielders involved. Junior Moreno get some goals, stuff like that.
Little goals by committee. I do like that creativity to problem solve, to get that sort of next man up mentality and stuff like that. I think that is a maybe an underrated talent for Pat Noonan, something that maybe we aren't talking about enough. But
I agree.
Yeah.
All right, Justin, any storylines that we missed? Anything else we should be keeping an eye on through the 2024 season?
Tons once the season starts playing on, but no, I think that we're in good shape, and I think that FC Cincinnati pulling forward, we will see what the storylines are. Obviously, we're waiting to see what happens with Barrial in the last couple of days. That will be a huge one. If Barrial somehow gets signed with a club in Europe and is not making it to the team at the beginning of the year, we are really hurt on wingers, and left wing back, right wing back. We're in dire straits there. So that will be the Achilles heel for FC Cincinnati.
Well, if that happens, we can have you back on and we could do another weakness segment for throughout the season. Justin, thank you so much for being our guest today. Tell us where we can find your work.
Yeah, so Cincinnati Soccer Talk.com. We have, like 20, 25 guys and gals that do a really good job over there. Podcasts, written, photographers. We have a tremendous team. If you could check us out, we're on Apple, Spotify, all the normal channels. We have Talking Tactics with Coach Gall. We have, Jersey Swap with Jeff Tebbets. And then our main shows are on Monday at 9 p.m. on YouTube and Twitter, Facebook.
Absolutely. Go check that out. You'll recognize the Weigel brothers from probably our most frequent guest, one of the most frequent guests we have on the show, and someone we've had a great relationship with, which is why all the hate in my direction seems a little unfounded. But, it is what it is. I sent a tweet that people didn't like. FC Cincinnati, we're here for you. We love you. Have a great summer. Have a great season, and thank you for joining us tonight on IED Sports.
Thanks, Justin.